At its peak, the Dutch East India Company was so powerful that no one imagined it could ever disappear. It didn't lose a final war. It wasn't overthrown by a revolution. There was no single moment where everything suddenly collapsed. In fact, most investors didn't even realize it was dying. Ships still sailed. Dividends were still paid. The company still ruled half the world. But behind the scenes, something was breaking. Not from the outside, from the inside. The Dutch East India Company wasn't destroyed. It rotted. And by the time anyone tried to stop it, the most powerful company in history was already beyond saving. This is the story of how that happened. Chapter 1. The company that seemed invincible. To understand why the VOC collapsed, we first need to understand just how dominant it once was. By the mid-17th century, the Dutch East India Company had become the backbone of the Dutch Republic's economy. Its ships connected Europe to Indonesia, India, China, Japan, the Middle East. It controlled the spice trade. It dominated shipping. It outcompeted rivals through scale, violence, and state backing. Crucially, the VOC wasn't just a company. It was a hybrid entity, part corporation, part government. It could declare war, build fortresses, sign treaties, enforce monopolies. This fusion of state power and private profit gave the VOC enormous advantages. And for decades, it worked. Dividends flowed. Shares remained stable. Confidence grew. The VOC didn't need to be efficient. It only needed to be dominant. That assumption would eventually destroy it. Chapter 2. Corruption becomes the system. The VOC governed vast territories from thousands of kilometers away. Communication between Asia and Amsterdam could take over a year. This created an environment where oversight was weak and temptation was constant. VOC officials in Asia were poorly paid compared to the wealth they controlled, so they supplemented their income. At first quietly, then openly, then systemically. Private trade company employees were forbidden from trading for themselves. In reality, almost everyone did. Officials used VOC ships, warehouses, and soldiers to move personal goods. They skimmed profits. They falsified accounts. Private trade became so widespread that it undermined the company's own monopoly. The VOC wasn't just being exploited by outsiders. It was being hollowed out by its own employees. Bribery and local alliances. In Asia, VOC power depended on local rulers. To maintain access and control, officials paid bribes. They accepted kickbacks. They signed unfavorable contracts for personal benefit. Company interests and personal interests diverged, and personal interests usually won. No accountability. Attempts to reform corruption failed repeatedly. Why? Because corruption was profitable. Senior officials benefited. Middle managers benefited. Local partners benefited. The VOC had created an empire where dishonesty was rewarded and honesty was punished. By the time Amsterdam realized the scale of the problem, corruption was no longer an exception. It was the business model. Chapter 3. Competition and a changing world. While the VOC stagnated, the world moved on. The end of monopoly economics. The VOC's success depended on monopolies. Control supply, restrict access, keep prices high. But monopolies are fragile. Smuggling increased. Rival traders bypassed VOC ports. Spice plants were transplanted to new regions. Suddenly, nutmeg and cloves were no longer rare. Prices fell. The VOC couldn't adapt to competitive markets. Its entire structure was built around control, not efficiency. The rise of rivals. The British East India Company grew stronger. Local Asian merchants regained leverage. New trade routes emerged. Unlike the VOC, newer competitors adapted faster cut costs, focused on flexibility. The VOC remained bloated, bureaucratic, and slow. Shifting global demand, Europe's tastes changed. Spices became less central. New goods, tea, coffee, textiles, gained importance. The VOC failed to pivot effectively. It had mastered the 17th century. But the 18th century required a different kind of company. Chapter 4: Debt, Denial and Decay. As profits declined, the VOC faced a choice: reduce dividends, shrink operations, reform governance, or pretend nothing was wrong. It chose denial. Borrowing to appear healthy. Instead of cutting payouts, the VOC borrowed money, massively. Debt covered operating costs, debt funded dividends, debt hid losses. For a time it worked. Shareholders remained calm. The illusion of stability continued. But debt doesn't disappear. Interest payments ballooned. Cash flow dried up. Assets deteriorated. Decay on the ground ships rotted in harbour. Forts fell into disrepair. Sailors went unpaid. The VOC still looked powerful on paper. In reality, it was collapsing. Political paralysis. The Dutch government hesitated. The VOC was too important to fail, too embarrassing to save openly, too complex to reform quickly. So nothing meaningful was done. By the time action was unavoidable, it was too late. Chapter 5: Collapse and Consequences. By the 1790s, the VOC was insolvent. Wars with Britain worsened the situation. Trade routes collapsed. Revenue vanished. In 1799, the Dutch state dissolved the VOC. Its assets were nationalized. Its debts were absorbed by the government. Its employees were dismissed. The world's first multinational corporation was gone. What the VOC left behind? The VOC collapsed, but its legacy remained. It created shareholder capitalism, stock markets, corporate governance models. It also exposed moral hazard, corporate corruption, state corporate entanglement. The systems we rely on today were shaped by both its success and its failure. Real reason: the VOC collapsed. The Dutch East India Company didn't collapse because trade ended. It collapsed because power went unchecked, because accountability failed, because institutions refused to adapt, because profit replaced purpose. Its story is not ancient history. It is a warning, one that modern corporations would do well to remember. If you want more deep, factual stories about the rise and fall of global power, consider subscribing. This channel explores how history still shapes the world we live in.